Tractate 2 on Virtue, Chapter 1. Since evil is here, haunting this world by necessary law, and it is the soul's design to escape from evil, we must escape hence. But what is this escape? In attaining likeness to God, we read, and this is explained as becoming just and holy, living by wisdom, the entire nature grounded in virtue. But does not likeness by way of virtue imply likeness to some being that has virtue? To what divine being, then, would our likeness be? To the being, must we not think, in which, above all, such excellence seems to inhere, that is, to the soul of the cosmos and the principle ruling within it, the principle endowed with a wisdom most wonderful. What could be more fitting than that we, living in this world, should become like its ruler? But at the beginning, we are met by a doubt whether, even in this divine being, all the virtues find place. Moral balance, for example, or fortitude, where there can be no danger since nothing is alien, where there can be nothing alluring whose lack could induce the desire of possession. If, indeed, that aspiration towards the intelligible which is in our nature exists also in this ruling power, then one need not look elsewhere for the source of order and of the virtues in ourselves. But does this power possess the virtues? We cannot expect to find there what are called the civic virtues, the prudence which belongs to the reasoning faculty, the fortitude which conducts the emotional and passionate nature, the moral balance which consists in a certain pact, in a concord between the passionate faculty and the reason, or the rectitude which is the due application of all the other virtues, as each in turn should command or obey. Is the likeness then attained perhaps not by these virtues of the social order, but by those greater qualities known by the same general name? And if so, do the civic virtues give us no help at all? It is against reason utterly to deny likeness by these while admitting it by the greater. Tradition at least recognizes certain men of the civic excellence as divine, and we must believe that these two had in some sort attained likeness. On both levels there is virtue for us, though not the same virtue. Now, if it be admitted that likeness is possible, though by a varying use of different virtues, and though civic virtues do not suffice, there is no reason why we should not, by virtues peculiar to our state, attain likeness to a model in which virtue has no place. But is that conceivable? When warmth comes in to make anything warm, must there need be something to warm the source of the warmth? If a fire is to warm something else, must there be a fire to warm that fire? Against the first illustration, it may be retorted that the source of the warmth does already contain warmth, not by an infusion, but as an essential phase of its nature, so that, if the analogy is to hold, the argument would make virtue something communicated to the soul, but an essential constituent of the principle that the soul absorbs when attaining likeness. Against the illustration drawn from the fire, it may be urged that the analogy would make that principle identical with virtue, whereas we hold it to be something higher. The objection would be valid if what the soul takes in were one and the same with the source, but in fact, virtue is one thing, the source of virtue quite another. The material house is not identical with the house conceived in the intellect, and yet stands in its likeness. The material house has distribution and order, while the pure idea is not constituted by any such elements. Distribution, order, symmetry are not parts of an idea. So with us, it is from the Supreme that we derive order and distribution and harmony, which are virtues in this sphere. The existences there, having no need of harmony, order, or distribution, have nothing to do with virtue, and, nonetheless, it is by our possession of virtue that we become like to them. Thus, there is much to show that the principle that we attain likeness by virtue in no way involves the existence of virtue in the Supreme. But we have not merely to make a formal demonstration, we must persuade as well as demonstrate. Chapter 2. First, then, let us examine those good qualities by which we hold likeness comes, and seek to establish what is the thing which, as we possess it in transcription, is virtue, but as the Supreme possesses it, is in the nature of an exemplar or archetype, and is not virtue. We must first distinguish two modes of likeness. There is the likeness demanding an identical nature in objects, which further must draw their likeness from a common principle, and there is the case in which B resembles A, but A is a primal, not concerned of B, and not said to resemble B. In this case, likeness is understood in a distinct sense. We no longer look for identity of nature, but, on the contrary, for divergence, since the likeness has come about by mode of difference. What then precisely is virtue, collectively and in the particular? The clearer method will be to begin with the particular, for so the common element by which all the forms hold the general name will readily appear. The civic virtues, on which we have touched above, are a principle or order and beauty in us as long as we remain passing our life here. They ennoble us by setting bound and measure to our desires and to our entire sensibility, and dispelling false judgment, and this by sheer efficacy of the better, by the very setting of the bounds, by fact that the measured is lifted outside the sphere of the unmeasured and lawless. And further, these civic virtues, measured and ordered themselves, and acting as a principle of measure to the soul, which is the matter of their forming, and in this they are like the measure reigning in the overworld, and they carry a trace of that highest good in the Supreme. For while utter measurelessness is brute matter and wholly outside of likeness, any participation in ideal form produces some corresponding degree of likeness to the formless being there. And participation goes by nearness. The soul, nearer than the body, therefore closer akin, participates more fully and shows a godlike presence, almost cheating us into the delusion that in the soul we see God entirely. This is the way that men of civic virtues attain likeness.